Not too long ago, we ranked all the bosses in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom from worst to best, but this time we are re-ranking every single boss from easiest to hardest, with the last one being the most difficult boss in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Now, lots of this is based on my initial playthrough and some of the things that I've heard from you guys online, so of course, take everything what I say based on my opinion. It's okay if you guys have a different opinion on these bosses as well. Now, before we get started, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Most of you guys watching this video right now are not yet subscribed. Help us reach our goal of 250,000 subscribers. We are super duper close. But thank you to everybody that's tuning in today. And without further ado, we are ranking all 20 bosses in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom from easiest to hardest. Starting off the list as our easiest boss, number 20, we have Moragia. This one was definitely more of a spectacle boss because all you do is jump on a glider and just glide back and forth as you shoot Yunobo at these things that are extruding from the volcano. Now, they're not really hard to hit because it almost feels like it's auto steering you and auto aiming you to always hit these things whenever you're close. And I don't even think they deal really any damage to you. When they shoot anything at you, it just bounces off your glider. So to me, there's really no risk of doing anything in this boss battle. You just glide back and forth and shoot Yunobo, and then you're done before you know it. Once again, it definitely is just meant to be a cool little overworld scene and cutscene for a second, and it's over before you know it. It's cool, but it's just not hard whatsoever. Next up, we have Yunobo, which is another weird boss battle where all you have to do is hit him 3 times. No matter what weapon you're using, it's going to deal the same amount of damage. You're only allowed to hit him once before he recovers his health, and you have to do this 3 times. And the only attack that he really has is he tries to roll into you. It's not hard at all. I mean, you literally have to try to get hit. I mean, I was messing around for a while to extend this boss battle a little longer, but yeah, it's literally as easy as it looks. All you have to do is move out of the way real quick and then hit him once. It's done and over, and once you do that 3 times, yep, it's an incredibly easy boss battle. Number 18, we have the High Knox. The High Knox is very, very simple, coming back from Breath of the Wild. All you have to do is shoot it in its eye to stun it, and you'll drop it on the ground, allowing you to completely wail on the guy, and even take a sword or another shield, or even a bow off of his necklace, and use it against him. Now, this is just a very much rinse and repeat boss battle. You turn around, shoot him in the eye, drop him back down. And it's not hard to hit his eye at all. In fact, you can even use bullet time to make it 10 times easier in order to hit his eye and knock him down into a stun state. Now, every now and then he will try to cover his eye up with his hand, but it's a very rare thing that happens, and it happens towards the end of his health bar. Overall, the High Knox coming back from Breath of the Wild is cool, and they're definitely a spectacle with how big they are, but the actual boss battle itself is just no challenge whatsoever. Number 17, we have the Demon Dragon. Once again, an amazing spectacle to end the game, but the battle itself was extremely easy. The dragon doesn't really do anything to hurt Link besides shoot a couple of balls of gloom in the air, which a lot of them get deflected by Zelda, and you can just easily glide past the rest. The only time you'll actually probably take damage is by standing on the dragon itself, which is just about it. You jump on the dragon, defeat some of the eyeballs on its back, and it's over before you know it. Even the final scene where you're jumping into his head isn't a challenge whatsoever. It's more just of an awe experience as you fall down from the clouds and land to deal that final blow. Now, of course, not every single boss needs to be an incredibly tough boss battle to be good, and once again, I'm not taking anything away from this battle. It just is extremely easy, and I think we can all pretty much agree on that. Number 16, we have the Sludge-like, which is pretty much just like a regular overworld like, which can be kind of challenging here and there. Now, all you have to do is wait for it to send out its bulbous sac that comes out of its mouth and then hit it with an arrow in order to rush it, and really with this one, all you do is shoot water at it too, so it's not that difficult, but yes, it poses a slight more threat than anything that I've talked about so far, because it can move around the sludge and pop up and shoot things at you, and the sludge also deals damage to you as you're standing in it, meaning you have to clear out areas of sludge before you can even make your way to it. Once again, not difficult whatsoever, and meant to be more of a mini-boss if anything, but it still is not that difficult. Number 15, we have the Knox, which is a little bit more difficult than the High Knox, as now his eyeball can drop out right before it dies and bounce around the room with its own individual health bar, which makes it slightly harder. Also, the style Knox can pick up pieces of its own body and throw them at Link, which does give it, once again, another step or level of difficulty to make it a little harder. It's not just about stabbing it and shooting it in the eye, it's about chasing the eyeball itself around the room, as technically it is the style Knox. For one of the main bosses in this game, I really expected Marble Goma to be something unique, especially as a returning boss throughout the Zelda franchise with the Goma. Yeah, I didn't get much here. Now, this boss battle wasn't bad, but it was also extremely easy. I mean, I can't even remember some of the attacks that it had. I feel like the only attacks that it would do is slowly throw, marbled rock at you and then surround you in some, and all you had to do was just keep walking up to Yunobo and pressing A. So it was just a constant battle of walking up to Yunobo, press A to get yourself out of marbled rock before it explodes. And knocking down the marbled Goma itself is like too easy. When it's up on the ceiling, I thought I had to aim on the side walls and stuff. I just chucked the guy up on the ceiling and he would always hit him and knock him down one way or another. I don't know, I felt like it was just a little too easy, and yeah, it took a lot of powerful weapons to take him down as he had a lot of health, but he didn't have many unique or powerful attacks to him. Spoiler alert, if you didn't see my other video, Colguera was my number 1. Yeah, I loved Colguera as my favorite boss battle in Tears of the Kingdom, but it is very easy. But that shows you sometimes bosses don't need to be extremely difficult to be extremely memorable and have a good time with them. But Colguera, yeah, it's very easy. I mean, if you wanted to play this thing safe completely, you wouldn't even need to necessarily glide through its body portions. I mean, all you had to do is just fire some arrows at it and then it would die. But yeah, using Toolin to just blow you out of the way from most attacks is just that simple by pressing A. I think the most dangerous attack that it has is shooting up the spikes and maybe some of the tornadoes that it puts up on the screen. But once again, you can just wait for all the spikes to go through and then just take your time with this boss battle. I mean, you seriously probably would never get hit if you just took it nice and slow. Unlike me, I was trying to dive at any opportunity I could to dive through its portions and its segments. But yeah, if you take this thing slow and just really try to save your hearts, you won't have a problem. The Flux Construct is a super fun boss fight that utilizes all your special abilities, and it's one of the first bosses that you'll probably find in this game, which isn't a main story boss, but more of a mini boss. But it's a lot of fun to fight, but also not extremely difficult, but definitely middle of the road. There are some attacks that can definitely hit you if you're not paying attention, as it teleports towards you and slams its arms on the ground. Another very easy way to get hit is when it forms a giant cube and starts rolling around the room. You have to stop for a second in order to grab the right cube, especially with the third version of these constructs, which does not stop rolling, and the main cube that you need to hit keeps swapping spots with another one, which makes this boss fight a lot more difficult than what it might seem, but still just about middle of the road with all the bosses that we've seen so far. I see the Flux as a better version of the High Knox, and that's just with everything. Its attacks are more varied, there's more things that it can actually do to hurt you, and it's a lot more difficult. The Flux, yes, can be cheesed, of course, by just jumping off of it and hitting it in the eye, and the reason why it's not higher on this list because it is so easy to cheese. One of its main attacks to get you off its back is it just shoots you in the air, which you can just glide back down and bullet time its eye to keep rinse and repeating. But the different ore deposits that you have to take down on its back are a lot, and they take a lot of health, which means you will break a lot of weapons trying to kill this guy. Also, his attacks, once again, are extremely varied. If you're flying in on a device, he will jump in the air to try to bite you out of the air. He'll also try to ground pound on you multiple times as you're running, and if you're not in a full sprint, you will get hit, and it does a lot of damage. He'll even try to suck you up. If you're not running in the opposite direction fast enough, you will get eaten, and it does, once again, a lot of damage. So this is a definitely harder version of the High Knox, but just down in the depths, in my opinion. Now starting the final 10, we have number 10, the Seized Construct. Now this one can be difficult just because it changes your controls completely. It's a new way to battle, and one thing I kept forgetting is I had a block, which is often something you need to do. What you have to do is switch arms in order to hit it and knock it into the railing on the sides, but it also can grow arms and also have attachments as well, which one time it'll fly around the room and also fire cannons at you, which you'll have to get out the way. Something else I kept forgetting is I can't leave the construct or move at all because the whole floor is covered in gloom, which will hurt Link. Once again, it's not too bad once you get the hang of it and understand the controls, but it's easy to forget that you have a block. I also was able to cheese this because I brought in an ice emitter when I first dropped into this battle, which allowed me to keep freezing it, allowing me to get my attacks in a lot more often. But outside of that cheese, this boss battle can actually be pretty difficult if you don't know what you're doing. This one is probably going to confuse a lot of people, and trust me, it confused me when I was making this list. But the more I thought about it, yes, the Battle Talus and Stone Taluses in this game are still some tricky enemies when it comes down to certain breeds and certain types, as some can have crystals that are hidden on the backside and underneath in an awkward position where it's always going to turn around. Some of the Battle Taluses also have tons of enemies that are trying to fight you at the same time, and some Taluses like the Frost and the Magma Talus will have ways of hurting you because of their obvious elemental properties, which means you have to take the anti-elemental property against them, which can be very difficult, especially with the Gloom Talus, which can actually corrupt you as you're standing on top of it and hitting it, which makes it extremely difficult. And trust me, recall doesn't work either. When it throws its giant rock hands at you and you recall them back, it's almost like it does nothing to him, like he doesn't even flinch. So yeah, these guys are still strong and they can be pretty annoying sometimes. Now, I actually didn't think Monto Rock was that hard, just kind of annoying. Now, a lot of people online also had problems with Monto Rock and just not a lot of fun against it, and I can definitely see why on some second go-rounds, especially when you battle it again in the depths and you don't have the anti-gravity jump, which means you have to fight this thing with just pure gravity, which can be annoying because with anti-gravity you can actually jump into the air and bullet time in order to hit it with an arrow as it's running away. You can't really do that when you don't have the zero grav, which makes this a lot harder on its second and third playthroughs. But this guy can be very annoying, especially after you already hit it with the water. The shark of the Monto Rock isn't too bad, not at all. It's when it runs away, which means you could be spending so much time barely doing enough damage. If you hit it with an arrow clearly across the arena, you have to run all the way over in order to attack it, and by then, the time you get over there, he's probably getting back up and ready to go back into the shark again, which is extremely annoying, and it can prolong the battle for a very, very long time. Oduga is another one that a lot of people might not quite understand why I put so high, and it's just because it can be frustrating. Now, I know all it takes is a bomb in order to get it out of the sand, but he has to be extruding out of the sand in some proportion before that. But also, it just takes a lot of really good equipment. For one, it definitely takes a bomb, which you have to make sure you have a lot of these, but also, it has so much health. No matter where you hit it, on the stomach side, on the back side, it is going to take some of your best weapons, and it is going to take a while to take down. Also, if you're trying to get in position as it's chasing you in the sand, you're better off just taking your hit, because it's going to chase you down, and it's going to hit you very, very hard. He does so much damage. It's actually quite impressive for an overworld boss, and they still pose a big threat in Tears of the Kingdom. Number 6, we have Master Koga. Probably my most fun to mess around and play around with because you can. Now, he doesn't do too much damage, it's more just annoying damage, but he can be difficult. Like, seriously, you might play around and take his car and, make your own car and drive around the arena with him, but there's some phases where he actually can be very hard to hit, as he'll box himself in and also put things around him, so that way you have to make different paths around or above him in the sky in order to hit him. The one where he makes lots of planes and air vehicles was without a doubt the hardest one for me, because every time I tried to build something in order to get up to him, he would just fly by and just completely blow me to smithereens with his cannons and with his flame emitters, which sucked. The boat one thankfully wasn't too bad, but the hardest part about the boat section is that he also had different Yiga foot soldiers shooting arrows at me the whole time I was trying to line up shots with Yunobo. Then you have one where Master Koga has his own mech, like a construct, and it's very similar to that of the Seizure Construct. Lots of blocking, smacking him back and hitting him, and it definitely has its own levels of difficulty as well, because not only do you have to hit him, but then you have to jump out, hit him with an arrow, and then chase him down. And even within these fights, he had his own way to have barriers of protection as well, which just made him an actual threat in this game. Now we move to the final 5. At number 5, we have Phantom Ganon. Now, when you first fight this guy, odds are you probably fought him after defeating the Gloom Hands, or maybe you didn't. I don't know, it's up to you. Now, the ones with the Gloom Hands definitely destroyed me because I had little health, and I was not prepared to fight a 1v1 battle like this. But when I got to the actual boss fight against Phantom Ganon, it was still hard. Yeah, you have to know when to dodge at the right time, watching his sword swipes as sometimes he'll go horizontal and sometimes, which means flipping backwards isn't always going to work, and you might even need to parry sometimes with your shield. What also got very difficult is the fact that there were so many of them in the room chasing you down, especially when the main one would be in the middle of the room spreading gloom across the floor, which means you had to shoot it with an arrow while also backing down and destroying all of his copies in order to get them away from you. Also, the fact that each copy had a different weapon, from a spear to even a giant club, which could do some serious damage. I mean, these guys even chased me up the stairs multiple times, and I had to have a battle with them on the side of the steps within the castle, which was cool, but also kind of difficult because you had to move out of the way from the different pillars and stuff that was in the castle room, which is pretty cool, but definitely a difficult boss battle. Now, with all these bosses, you could say none of them are that hard if you practice enough and have the right gear, and I guess you could say that for King Gleeok and the regular Gleeoks as well, because if you're loaded up on the right bows, such as using Lionel bows that shoot 3 or even 5 arrows, and then of course having lots of Keith's eyeballs, you'll be good to go for the most part, because what you have to do is just keep shooting down his eyeballs in order to drop its body, but it has an unbelievable amount of health. You'll be dropping down using your best weapons to take out its eyeballs and even getting critical hits. It takes a very long time to take this dragon out, and some of its attacks are very powerful, not to mention it has elemental attacks all around it as well. For instance, the Thunder Gleeok will have lightning bolts all over the stage, and for me, this was definitely one of the most difficult ones, as you have to ride the air and the updrift that comes up from the lightning bolt. You have to dodge the other lightning bolts that are near you, and I kept forgetting to take off my metal, which hurt as well, where Flame Gleeok will shoot a giant ball of fire at you from the sky before it dies, which you'll have to get out of the way and then ride that gust up in order to take him down, where Frost Gleeok shoots icicles down from the sky, which as you're riding up can still hit you, which is very difficult to dodge all of them. Don't even get me started on King Gleeok, which has all 3 of these elements, which can be a massive pain in the butt. Once again, if you have the right materials, you can make this a lot easier for yourself, but you're going to need lots of rockets in order to fly up in the sky in order to dodge all of its attacks on the ground, because there are a lot, from it pushing you off the arena with its wings, or even blasting you in the face with lasers of different elemental properties. This is one boss that's extremely fun to fight, but definitely puts up a heck of a challenge and even rivals some of the greats like the Lionel. You guys knew it was coming, Queen Gibdo. This is the one that's infamous online for driving people to mere insanity, and trust me, I can see why. So my first time playing this and actually defeating the boss the first time was a little tricky. I thought after I hit it with an electric pulse, I was able to run up and attack it, which you can, but it's still mobile and it still will attack you back, which always led me to die. I died about 4 or 5 times off the rip because I didn't know I was supposed to shock it twice before running up to it. But it has so many attacks even when it's in its weakened state. It can shoot tornadoes at you, it can chase after you and try to run you over, or slam its hands on the ground in order to hit you. But don't get me started on the actual boss fight. The arena is filled with Gibdos, and even Moth Gibdos trying to attack you, and yes, there's lights that fall from the sky, but you're going to need to take out some of these pillars just to see what is going on. And Queen Gibdo can fly in this version, which makes it even more fun, of course, which means you have to knock it down once with a lightning bolt and try to get a second lightning bolt shot at it before it shoots up its defenses. The sand tornadoes that will cause you to waste one of your lightning strikes and arrows, and by the time your next lightning strike charges up, it's already back to normal, which means you have to repeat the process, which, let me tell you, is not fun. There's also the fact that you have to get close with Riju's lightning power in order for it to even hit it, and it can fly in the air far away and shoot this sand beam at you from the sky. This boss battle is definitely as annoying as people made it out to be. I don't like Queen Gibdo. I don't. It is hard, it is annoying, it is hard, it is annoying. Ganondorf once again gets cut off at number 2, not quite making it to the final for me. Trust me, the Demon King Ganondorf was very difficult, and I'm not going to count the Demon King's army as a boss battle, and that is the reason why I believe it's not quite the hardest boss battle, because most of people's problems is probably losing hearts within this section, because once you start losing hearts, you can't get them back, as they are gloom infested, which means you'll need some type of special potion in order to make sure you don't lose your actual hearts. So when it comes to the actual boss battle against the Demon King, it's not that difficult. His first phase is very easy. It's very much just like Phantom Ganon. And in fact, it's actually easier than Phantom Ganon, just moving out of the way at the right time and then slashing him with your sword. It's not until phase 2 when he grows a lot of health, which makes it difficult. But I know this is a cool scene when the health bar just continues to grow across the top end of the screen, but it doesn't mean a whole lot because your Master Sword does a heck of a lot of damage. And I'm sure if you have even more powerful weapons, they would do a lot more damage than this. I mean, I flew up in the sky just for one section and shot a bunch of Gibdo's bone arrows at him, and it took away almost half of his health. So you can definitely cheese this, which is just like any boss, but I didn't feel like this put up too much of a challenge to be number 1. Yes, lots of his sword swipes you had to know which direction he was swinging, once again, whether it was a horizontal swing or a vertical, and he could change multiple different weapons, and once I found out that you can actually reflect lots of his gloom attacks with your Master Sword, it made things a lot easier for me. But definitely the hardest part is the fact that you can't regen any health, which for sure is a pain in the butt, but it wasn't too bad. To me, the hardest part about this whole fight is after you trigger a Flurry Rush, he can do one as well, and knowing exactly how he's going to swipe the next time, which it can be a quick vertical or a quick horizontal, and you have to be pretty frame perfect because you won't get that trigger of the slow-mo once again. But with that said, this is a definitely really fun boss fight that puts up a huge challenge and definitely has defeated me on my replays of him, but to me, he's still not the hardest boss within this game. Still, to me, the Grand Champ, the number 1 most difficult boss within The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, is definitely the Lionel. Lionels are still a massive threat in this game. And I understand, I know a lot of people are going to bring it up how he's not technically a boss as he doesn't have a special boss health bar, but you cannot sit here and tell me that the Lionel doesn't pose more threats than any boss within this game. The Lionels are ruthless, and no matter what type of gear you're wearing, they are going to deal the most insane amount of damage to you, especially the silver ones. And don't even get me started on the Gloom Lionels, which actually can permanently erase some of your health. They are brutal, and no matter how well you know how to fight them, no matter how well you know their patterns, it's still very easy to get caught up in one of its quick attacks and get slashed across the stage, and there goes 90% of your hearts. Especially if you don't have any fairies, you'll find multiple times your hearts just completely deplete out of nowhere. I mean, I consider myself really good at fighting Lionels now, especially from Breath of the Wild, but even then, I'll be just going completely crazy, not getting touched once, hitting every single parry and every single Flurry Rush just to get hit one time at the end and realize, oh, I'm dead. I don't even have time to heal. Lionels are crazy powerful still, and there's even some down in the depths that have armor on them, which you have to knock out with tons of bombs or tons of cooking pots. Yes, if you didn't know that, use a Zonai cooking pot at the end of your arrow. It takes out lots of armor on enemies, but it still takes so many materials and weapons to take these guys down, and they still have the most powerful rewards for taking them down. I'm sorry, but the Lionel, boss or not, is the most difficult boss in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and still holds the crown. With that, that is my list of the most difficult bosses in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom ring. That's all 20 bosses for you guys, so please let me know in the comments down below what was the most difficult boss for you and why. Do you agree or disagree with my list? Let me know down below, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Nintendo in general. And like always, I'll see you all in the next one. See you guys.